Hello, I'm Natalia and I'm a social media marketer at Clockify. And today in this interview, I'll be talking to Rich Cardona.
Hi, I'm so sorry for being late. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's only like what, a minute or two. It's fine. Don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
we ran late on a meeting, just a client need, and
It's
I
fine.
apologize. I really
Totally
want to make sure
fine.
I respect your time. Okay,
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. I just want to check you can see me, right? Hear me, no issues. Yes.
No, no issues. I hear you perfect and see you perfectly clear.
Okay, cool. So how was your day today? How was
So
the
far,
meeting?
so far, so good. A lot of good client activity, and just in the rhythm. I'm a very routine driven person, so everything's going very well.
That's cool. That's cool to hear. So thank you so much for your time today. I'm really happy and I can't wait to ask you all of the questions that I have here.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd like to start off with your career. And I know that you were in the Marines for like 17 years, right? So
That's
that's
correct.
super long.
Yes.
So I'd just like to know what was it like and obviously like why you stopped doing that after so long.
Sure, sure. The reason I even entered the Marines, I was 17 years old. So when I retired,
Wow.
I had spent literally half of my life in the Marine Corps. It's crazy. But I went in just because I was, I was troubled, so to speak, in high school. And I was like, this was my first self-awareness moment where I just realized college was not going to be an option. And I also didn't just want to work locally just so I could make money to eat and drink. So I knew I needed some character, some discipline. I went into the Marines thinking I was going to do 4 years, and 3 years into it, 9/11 happened. And then I reenlisted after that. And then I continued on, and I started out enlisted. And at some point I wanted to do more. Enlisted just means I was, kind of the enlisted ranks, a sergeant, corporal, things like that. And I had a desire to be an officer and to go to college, which you needed a degree to become an officer. So I applied for a couple programs. My performance dictated that I was available to enter some of these programs. And then I got a commission. I went to college, and then I got commissioned as a lieutenant. And then I went to flight school.
Wow.
That was crazy. I never, in my wildest dreams, thought I'd be flying an aircraft. So I learned how to fly three different aircraft, and I ended up flying attack helicopters, which was fantastic. So everything that I had imagined it would be was exceeded incredibly. And the rigidity, the structure, the kind of brother and sisterhood that exists in, when you serve in the military. But ultimately, I've really not shared this too publicly. I had a seizure not long after I got back from Afghanistan. I was running a half marathon and I had a seizure, and they said you never know, like you may never have one again, or you might have another, but we can't take the chance of having you in an aircraft and having a seizure. So I kind of got medically disqualified.
Mhm.
And the Marine Corps at that time, I was super blessed. They had an option. If you were between 15 and 20 years of service, you could retire early.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was always just 20 or nothing. It's
Mhm.
like you had to get to 20. So I applied for that program at 16 years in, and I retired at 17. And I was very happy with that decision because I was afraid I wasn't going to be marketable on the outside for some reason. And I was like, okay, I'm still young enough that I could go get an MBA or something and be marketable. And that was the conclusion of my career. But it was some of the best 17 years I've ever spent of my life.
That's amazing. So you flew so many different kinds of planes. Did you expect that? You didn't expect, being a pilot as well.
No, never. I was never, nothing like that. I never even thought, just as an adult, like even now looking back, I'm like, how was I able to do that? Just because of the level of skill sets that you need to, really embrace in order to do all those things at once, because it is the ultimate multitasking operation. I mean, you're flying an aircraft, you're looking out for other aircraft, you're listening, you're communicating, you're touching buttons, you're talking to the people in the back. I mean, it is insanity. So no, I never could have predicted that that was something that was going to be happening in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, especially because you didn't expect it. Kind of when you expect something, you kind of mentally prepared for it. Like this, you're not mentally prepared, so you probably were worried about it as well. So it must have been a good experience for you to grow as well as a person, especially young, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we surprise ourselves a lot, and it's great when we are able to kind of exceed our own expectations of ourselves. So yes, it was a fantastic experience.
Okay, that's cool to hear. So okay, thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
So working as a Marine, I mean, you just told me you learned a lot of skills, obviously. So how have those skills affected like the rest of your life and your career in particular?
I think, one of the benefits of having served, especially in the Marine Corps, is people have an expectation of you. They think you have high standards. They think you like rigidity. They think you like structure. And that's a really interesting transition when you get out, because you now all of a sudden want to grow facial hair instead of having to shave every day. You now, don't want to get a haircut every other week or anything like that. And maybe you don't want to have to stay in shape. There's just all these things. Okay. You kind of just want to be normal, so to speak. But at the same time, you kind of want to uphold the service or what you just came from. So the expectations are high, and not all veterans are created equal, is what I like to say. I mean, there's plenty of veterans who don't do amazing things when they get out, and I was almost one of them. But as far as how I applied those things, I went and worked for Amazon, and it was very blue collar, which I enjoyed, but I was really different than a lot of the other managers. Like, a lot of people wore shorts and gym sneakers in the warehouse. I wore boots and pants every day, and I wore a collared shirt and then my vest on top of that, not a t-shirt. I mean, from time to time, I would wear other things, but I was really trying to kind of set a different standard, like just come up and be very consistent in the way I showed up. And appearance is one of those things. The second thing is, we always had a radio on us, and every other manager in the building is always trying to blow you up and, like, talk and talk and talk and tell you what's going on. And there's conveyance going on. It's so much activity. It's like overstimulus. I would turn my radio off so that way I could just talk to my associates. And everyone senior to me would get so upset, like, you haven't answered your radio and blah, 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 blah. But they're like, but every time we come to you, you're talking to one of your associates. And I was like, yeah. And why do you think they're performing so well? Like, why do you think I'm crushing everyone's numbers, in comparison, by comparison? Why do you think our culture on my team is so strong? It's because I'm involved. I don't let you distract me because you have a million fires you think need to put out. But the most important thing we need to do is invest in people. That's a huge takeaway. Like, that's something I learned from the military. Like, it's never about you, it's about your Marines. So I kind of applied some of those same principles, and it worked out. Although that was a good part of the job, but overall the job was not for me. So ultimately I had to leave.
So the job wasn't for you, but you kind of like the approach of the about making it about the people, right? For the greater good.
100%.
100%. So you're sure that came from your Marine years, right?
I think so. I mean, we just have to take care of each other in another way. If all I care about is if, you know, Scott comes into work and does his job for 20 hours or for 10 hours and meets, the numbers that I need him to meet, so to speak, then that's not a good experience for him. He's going to go home and just complain about work and that he didn't learn anything. So it wasn't just conversations. It was me trying to educate them on some of the business of the warehouse itself. Like, this is what this means. This is what this means. We lose money if we do this. So I was trying to enhance their acumen. And again, that's like, we always had to be teaching as leaders in the Marine Corps, teaching. You always wanted the person, quote unquote, below you to be set up to take your job. And that approach has worked beautifully for me in everything I've ever done.
So like educating people about the background of what they're doing so that it's not just a mundane task, right?
Exactly. And what I'm doing, so that way they're enhancing their business acumen or their skill sets. And that forces me to be like, well, I'm training them to take my job. So what am I training for? And then I go and get curious and start talking to people ahead of me so I could get that skill set as well.
Okay, that's a good motivator, right? So you're training someone to possibly take over you, and then you're going to also have to up your game as well, just in case.
100%.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a good idea. I might actually think about that one day.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so and then after the Navy, you mentioned Amazon now, we'll get to that, but you also worked as a marketing specialist, right? And then you started your operations managing job at Amazon. Is that right?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
So you just mentioned a bit about your experience, but could you like expand? What was your experience at Amazon like? You said that it wasn't for you, yet you seem to kind of had your game right on. You kind of already knew how to talk to the people. So why wasn't it for you?
I did have my game on because I take pride in my work, and because I take pride in helping elevate people, but it wasn't for me because I felt like a black sheep in that regard, in terms of my approach to it. Everything was very numbers driven. The hours were extremely long. I wasn't getting to see my newborn daughter sometimes for 2 days at a time just because of my work schedule and her sleep schedule. Everything was just, there's just a kind of the bureaucratic, just, kind of nonsense that goes on with many businesses. But I just felt, when you work for an organization that's the tip of the spear, so to speak, and probably the most recognized organization in the world, it's almost impossible not to feel like a number. I knew at any time I could leave and that there'd be a million people wanting that position, whether they were already working there or not. And that didn't make me feel very special. I came from a very special place. And here's the biggest thing, actually, if I want to be really honest. The people I served with in the Marine Corps were some of the most talented humans I've ever been around. And especially in a squadron of pilots, when you're in what we call the ready room and we're getting a brief and there's like 50 other pilots there, you're just looking around and you're just like, wow, like all these people are exceptional. And leaders as well. And then, my leaders in the Marine Corps, some of my commanding officers and stuff like that. I did not have that vibe. There was no one I was trying to aspire to be when I was at that company. And that was very new territory for me. I was like, well, if I don't want to be like them, then why am I climbing this ladder? Like, what is the end game here? And I didn't have the clarity, to be honest. So I didn't have the clarity on what I actually wanted, which is very normal for people who get out and transition. They're just like, they leave their jobs a lot of times in the first 1 or 2 years because they're still figuring things out. So I knew it wasn't for me at some point, and then ultimately it came to an end.
I see. So, but yeah, I mean, I guess from what you've just told me, your experience in the Marines was very positive. So maybe you kind of set the bar too high for yourself. And then in Amazon, it just didn't cut it, right? Because the bar was too high. In the Marines, you were around all these amazing people. And then in Amazon, you just felt like a number. So is that part of what kind of motivated you to start your own business? Was that part of it?
I mean, I once interviewed, I've interviewed him a few times, but I interviewed Gary Vaynerchuk and I was talking to him about this exact thing. And my wife had told me once, like, maybe your standards for them are too high. And I told him that. He goes, she's wrong. Because your standards are exactly where they need to be, and it just became suffocating. So I left. Now, did I know I was going to start a business? Here's me starting a business. I once went to Europe for 2 months when I retired from the Marine Corps, and I took, I think, 10,000 pictures. I 10, loved it. I was wow. something ridiculous. And, probably 9,700 of them were not good. So
that's fine. I mean, it just takes one, and then it doesn't matter how.
Yeah. So, and I mean, we went to Austria, we went to Italy, we went back to Italy, we went to Spain, we went to London, we went to Paris, we went everywhere. And it was fantastic. And I remember that so vividly that when I left Amazon, I said to myself, like, maybe there's something there, because I love to do this. Now, this is where people confuse their passion for what their actual calling might be. And I started taking photography courses. This is the funniest thing. I am an MBA graduate. I worked at Amazon. I was a retired Marine. I was applying to just be like an associate at photography stores where I was living, and no one took me. And I was like, this is insane. And I'm just trying to learn. I just want to touch lenses and talk to people and understand and all these things. And I realized very quickly that like you said, it only takes one, but I kind of felt like you had to be struck by lightning to make it in photography. So then I started experimenting with videography. And then that's when I actually thought to myself, okay, maybe there's a business here. And I just started saying, hey, you have no videos on Facebook, this local gym or this diner, like, how are you attracting people that are passing through this town and things like that? So I started getting into videography, and what it really is, Anna, to be completely honest, is I realized it was storytelling. Like, these people are not telling their stories. I love to tell my story or love to talk about experiences and convey that. So that's what really kind of kicked it off. And then eventually things kind of went a little bit crazy in a good way, and we could get to that whenever you'd like. But yeah, that's how it started. I didn't have a plan of any kind.
You didn't have a plan. Okay, well, I think those things kind of always turn out the best, right? When we don't have plans and you just kind
Yeah.
of let your intuition or whatever guide
Yes.
you. So what about the videos? What were they like? Did you take 10,000 videos as well? Or
No, no, I was using iMovie and some camera I had, and I was just trying to just learn how to edit because I believe like anyone could press record, but how can you put something together, and how could you put it together with music, and just really kind of make it something stimulating or something attractive that separates one business from another or one person from another. So I was going to conferences just to kind of enhance these skills, and here's where everything really changed. There was a gentleman, Gary Vee was at this conference, and I got to ask him a question, and that's how I ended up getting to spend time with him, because I said, can I spend an hour with you in New York or something crazy like that? And he's like, let's do it. But I was at this video conference, and I had told him I was a Marine, just like I did on this show. And later someone approached me, and he was a CEO of a company, and he was a retired Navy. And he goes, dude, that was amazing. I love that you asked that. Marines are the best. You put your question out there fearlessly and da 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 da. It's like, yeah, it was great to meet you. And we talked for a little while, and that was it. Well, later he goes, hey, I really need some video content. This is like a couple months later. I really want to do some good things on LinkedIn. Do you think you could do some stuff for me? And that's when I really kind of pivoted away from kind of like making montage videos and focusing on people. And I love talking to people. I love helping people enhance their brand. I love people helping them show up authentically. And that became kind of my core business, which was creating video content for business owners and CEOs, doing research on what questions are being asked about their industry, seeing the engagement they get, helping them grow a profile, helping them grow a brand, because I believe you stand in front of the brand, not the other way around. And that became the business, and it went very strongly. And during the course of that time, I started podcasting as well, just to kind of enhance the way I interact with people. And again, like I said, things just kept kind of elevating. So it sounds like there's no failures here, but there's plenty. But it just
oh, that's
things have gone
okay.
exceedingly well.
Well, that's normal, right? You have to fail sometimes as well. You can't just expect to always succeed. Otherwise, it wouldn't even be that interesting, I think. Although the moment of failure, it's not really nice. You don't see it that way, but after, in hindsight, you kind of appreciate them as well.
Absolutely. You learn from every failure. So, I mean, you always level up after failure. So yeah, I agree with you.
So when changing all of these kinds of paths you had on the way, did you ever feel doubtful or insecure about anything? And
I mean, I landed a massive contract yesterday, and my immediate feeling was doubt. Like, am I going to be able to deliver? Because this is a little bit more unique. So the doubt doesn't go away, I don't think. No matter how confident we are, we become doubtful. And I believe the reason people with good intentions become doubtful is because we want to serve. And you want to serve at a very high capacity. I want to show up, on time for interviews. I want to make sure that I'm giving something valuable. So I would say the doubt for a lot of people I know and people higher than me, the doubt doesn't necessarily go away, but the only way to kind of be able to sit in that doubt is a couple ways. One is just through repetition. I think we become less scared of things the more familiar we are with them. So if your number one issue is closing people on calls, and you need to figure out a way to have like an exceeding amount of calls. If you don't want to cold call, then maybe you should practice, just so that no doesn't hurt as much, just so getting hung up on doesn't hurt as much. Or maybe it's video content, wanting to get your personal brand out there. I mean, I have clients who I've made tons and tons of videos for, and in the beginning, no matter how prepared we were, as soon as I pressed record, they were frozen. but now they're incredibly comfortable. So repetition solves a lot of problems, number one. The second one is when you get nervous, focus on service. So the kind of what I was just saying, like when I get nervous, it's like, okay, like what is the byproduct of these emotions? The byproduct is, well, just think of having how I can serve at the highest capacity, not just what they want, not just what they signed the contract for, but all the other little things. Can I introduce them to someone whose podcast they can appear on? Is there someone that in our discovery call, maybe I notice that they have marketing issues and I know a fractional CMO I could put them in touch with. Well, what are all the other ways I can serve outside of just kind of what they hired me to do? And that level of service, that level of goodwill, I think always leaves a very positive experience in the hands of the client.
Yeah, and it takes your thoughts away from being nervous, right? So
yeah, it's just it's time to perform, not to be nervous. So
okay, yeah. I mean, I can get why, and also at the same time, you're kind of helping that person, and you're seeing that you're helping that person or that company, and you probably feel less and less nervous before it, right?
100%.
As you said, it never really goes away, but it kind of, you learn how to live with it.
Exactly, you learn how to sit with it and just push. I mean, what are you going to do?
Exactly. It's either that or
never
don't
mind?
do it. Yeah. Yeah. Never mind. I'll just be nervous and not do it anyway.
Exactly. So the choice is yours, and you just push.
Well, yeah, I agree. It's just difficult when you just do when you have to do it for the first time, but afterwards you kind of get used to that nervous feeling or doubtful thoughts. You just live with them, or they just go away by themselves anyway.
Yeah. The first time is the worst time. The first time you conducted an interview was probably the worst time.
Yeah,
and you exactly. Probably, you know what I'm saying? I always remember that the first time is the worst time. The level, the ability to improve is just substantial, the more you keep doing something. And I'm just a believer in that. So that kind of calms me down as well.
That's cool. You have, your own way to calm down, which is a really motivational way. So it's good. So, about your business, you've mentioned it a little bit right now already. So you do social media coaching, right, amongst other things as well. And what are your, how did you get into social media coaching? And you mentioned a little bit about it now. And what would you say are like the main challenges that your clients face? You said something now as well about that. So could you kind of expand a bit on that?
Sure. So our primary now, so our second offer is kind of the video content creation. Our primary offer now is podcast production, because I believe it is a little bit less intense than getting in front of camera if you're not ready to. Like I could record a solo episode like this and kind of coach the client through the podcast, through a good intro, through storytelling and all these things. And it just feels less intense than have them having to record a 1 minute concise, valuable clip. Long form content allows them to really just kind of get in a good rhythm, to talk how they talk, to show up exactly as they are. I like to say my entire premise for all of the things that I do is to make sure that we show up authentically and not, with veneer, not manicured, not our most official selves, like just show up exactly as you are. So podcast production is our primary, and then the content creation is the second. Throughout all of that is kind of the coaching. And how I got into that was, again, Gary Vee's been an incredible influence in my life, but I was dedicated on documenting the journey, which is something a lot of people just don't do. And the reason people don't document their journey through, written form or audio or video content or anything like that, is because they're afraid that no one's going to listen, no one's going to care, and no one's going to take anything valuable away from it. Well, number one, it's good for you because, like we talked about, you're going to get the repetitions in. You're going to get more comfortable. You're going to get more confident. You're going to deliver better. You're just going to consistently improve. Number two is, if in the future, you're going to look back and just be like, look how far I've come. Like you could look at something you made 6 months ago and probably notice a difference in how you presented then or how you showed up then versus how you did now. And then the third, as far as, kind of being able to show up besides, so I said the repetition and I'm so sorry, I lost my train of thought. So we were talking about how to social media coach.
Yeah. So what's the biggest challenges,
Sorry, that's
clients
right.
have, and then kind of you talked about what your main focus is podcasts, and then the
Yes.
second focus is just general video content and how to kind of like how you help people with your solo videos as well.
Yes. Yes.
So it's quite, I mean, it's quite a broad topic, right? I mean, no wonder it's easy to lose track because
Yeah.
so many little.
No, I'm glad. Thank you for refreshing me in the middle of that. I would say the other challenge is simply the fear that no one is going to care. And there's a phrase I like to use, and that is, you don't have to be viral to be valuable. A lot of people believe social media means, in having a good social media account or presence, means you need hundreds of thousands of followers or millions of followers, where in actuality, you just really need one. The best messages I get are not from the people who consume my content and like it and scroll past or anything like that. The best one is, you have no idea how much that episode helped me today, or I never thought of it like this, or my husband loves, my husband loves your show, or whatever it is. Those things mean more. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean this. Those things mean more than some of the money that comes in, because it's very tangible. Those virtual relationships that you don't realize exist come to fruition when you get those kinds of messages, and you realize that what you're doing day after day, even if you have a post that you feel tanked, you remember moments like that and I screenshot all that stuff and I keep it in a folder to just remind myself on the days where I just feel like nothing's going right. I'm like, well, that's not true. There's a lot of things going right. Look at all these reviews. Look at all these testimonials. Like, look at all these things. So the challenge is no one's going to care, and they believe there has to be some sort of level of virality to their content in order for it to actually have an impact, which couldn't be further from the truth. And I always like to tell people, so like, I could look at you right now like this, but I try and look at the camera so you feel like I'm looking at you. But little things like that. If you're looking at this, people sometimes imagine, I go, just look at the lens.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
imagine one person that you've ever helped in your life, and just kind of talk how you'd talk to them to this lens. Don't imagine a stadium full of people, because that's not happening. And the majority of people who are going to come across your content are going to scroll right by anyway, and they might like it without even listening, or they might like it without even reading it, or they might comment and be like, nice post, and it might be generic. But you are looking for that. You are trying to put yourself in a position where you're just trying to reach one person. And if you reach that one person, that person is going to do something special. They're going to either share your content, or they're going to tell someone else about your content. They're going to mention you over lunch or drinks or something along those lines. And that's how it really unfolds. So we have a very kind of slow, methodical, organic approach to everything, without trying to just do what social media requires of us. Let's just put out what we know to be true.
Okay, so yeah, so just following the algorithm and the numbers is not a good way to go, right? In general, for anything, especially Amazon, as you mentioned, just they're very much about the people, which I totally agree with you. I think that's a great way to look at things, to focus on the people and the impact that you have on them.
100%, absolutely.
And okay, so you just told me roughly what the social media coaching looks like, but are there any like technical elements to it where you do actually, so your focus is people and on helping people kind of show up as their true authentic selves and not really care about the numbers? But is that enough? Is that usually enough? And then the technical side catches up, or are they both important?
They're both important, but our service specifically. So right now we work with 7 to 8 figure business owners, and I'll tell you why. I've worked with a lot of solopreneurs, people just like me, and it's an investment of time, and it's investment in money. And there are components that involve them to be slightly technically savvy, or to be consistent on social posting, or to write copy, or to do hashtag research and all these things. And you know what? When you're starting out, that stuff just stacks on top of each other, and it's very easy to walk away. It's very easy to walk away from those things. And I just found out, like, it was just more of a challenge for those people at that stage of their business and trying to develop their personal brands. Now, with the kind of clientele that we have, they have been heads down, focused on business, just absolutely crushing it, but no one knows who they are. And now they are ready to have an impact. So to answer your question a little bit more fully on the technical side, our job is to eliminate every single technical aspect, posting, distributing, the copywriting, everything. So all they could do is focus on one thing, and that is just recording and delivering their message exactly how they want, the way we help them coach them up to do. And that's it. Everything else is a distraction. So if I want to over deliver, then I'm going to be like, this is legitimately done for you, because the only thing I can't do is record on your behalf. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But yeah, I mean, we eliminate everything so they could be quote unquote the talent, and we leave it there.
So you take over the boring side, so you let them be their 100% self, so they don't have to think always their energy or time on it.
Of course. It's way easier to show up that way anyway. So yes.
Yeah, I agree, because you don't have to think about all of the other things. You just have to think about what you want to say and how you want to help people.
Exactly.
Okay, I get it. That's cool. So you help your clients with videos, and so what about your clients? So they come from various industries, right? So or do you focus on just one industry, and kind of like, what are your clients like, and what kinds of videos you help them with?
They're very much referral based right now. I've never ever done paid advertising. I'm literally learning that skill set right now, just so I could be a little bit more targeted. But it's very much word of mouth. And my clients, here's what I could tell you about my clients. And this is not a jab at anyone who's at the stage I am in business or anything like that. But these people are far more efficient. They pay on time. They're responsive. They communicate regularly. They're not looking for an easy way out. Like, it's very, very clear to me that they have operated in this way for many years. And they are ideal clients in that regard, because it takes a lot of the stress out and it allows me to over deliver, because I'm like, wow, they emailed us back. Like, I don't want to be surprised that they emailed us back. If they, I don't want, you know what I'm saying? Like, those little things matter. Versus, the clients that I used to have, who are impossible to get a hold of, who come up with excuses all the time, who change recording times when our podcast producer is ready to go, last minute, like all those things, like those problems go away. So the type of clients that I work with are just absolutely professionals. And here's the biggest thing I would say: they're coachable, even though they're many, many millions of dollars away from where I want to be. But they're coachable. They don't discount my feedback, and I receive their feedback a lot better too. And the reason that's important is, if you're helping someone come up, or maybe they're kind of lateral to the level you're at, it's kind of really easy to see through the nonsense and the excuses and whatever, because I know I've been there. So I'd rather them just be honest. I don't have that problem with this type, these other clients. And the other thing is, they exceed my expectations, meaning they'll do things that I don't assign as homework. They're just kind of suggestive, but they take notes. They take it seriously. You could just tell that they've not only comprehended what I was telling them in terms of the coaching, but they apply it almost immediately. And it's just a good fit. Like, I want to level up like that. So it's, in a way, it's almost like they're paying me to help them, and at the same time, I'm learning so much from them. Like, it's just like a ridiculous win-win.
You're feeling like you're getting paid to learn.
In a way, yeah, absolutely.
No, it's good. So as you said, it's a win-win situation. But then I remember that I saw on your website that you've highlighted that, what was it? Yeah, 5 hours of shooting creates 3 months of content in one go. So that must be really useful, right? But could you explain that a bit more? So what is it? What's done in those 5 hours, and why?
Yeah, we call it show up and shoot. And It's up to 5 hours, but it usually never goes past 3. And I'm able to get on a flight home, so I don't have to sleep
Wow.
away from my daughters. It's like the best. But what we do is, let's just say you are a potential client. We have an onboarding call. I get to know everything about you, and then we determine your 3 content pillars. What should you be talking about? Maybe you're talking because you are at Clockify. Maybe we talk about time management. Okay. Maybe the other thing is, leadership, and maybe the other thing
Get a
is
notebook down.
yeah, yeah. And then one of your, I don't know, journaling. I mean, I have no idea how that has improved your life dramatically. So then we look around the marketplace, we do some research on Google and Reddit and Quora and all these things. And we determine like what questions are being most asked in the marketplace that you are in a position to answer as an expert. We prepare about 36 to 45 questions. You get them in advance. Okay. And then I fly out, or I have someone to go to you. And then we literally go through those questions like until they're done. And we change it. I have them bring a change of clothes so they could change a bunch of times. We have different places. We pick out places in the city that we're going to go to so that we're not in the same place and it's not the same thing every time. And then next thing you know, it's over. 2 weeks later, they have all that content captioned, edited, jump cuts, the copy written for them, everything. And then if they want, for an additional fee, we could distribute for them so they don't have to worry about distribution, or they could distribute themselves, and they have a nice content calendar with the video embedded, the copy and everything. The only thing we don't do is engage on their behalf. So if they're getting a lot of comments like this was very useful, but what would you do in this situation? Like we don't do that. Like while we might know your voice to an extent, we cannot speak on your behalf. So we just choose not to do that part. But everything else, again, is kind of done for you, and it's been a big brand builder for a lot of my clients.
That's cool. So I think that probably a lot of your clients want to engage by themselves, right? They're probably really happy to answer questions and talk to
exactly.
Finally, right?
Exactly. You're exactly right.
Okay, cool. And I saw that, on your LinkedIn post that you have mentioned that it's really important to prioritize time for mental health and creativity, right? So I saw that in one of your sub comments underneath your replies, and I was really interested to know. We at Clockify are generally interested to know is how do you find that time to balance, your work, your podcast, your family, all of this, still being super motivated, still doing all of this successfully, and like not feeling mentally drained, even though it's all positive. Like how do you do that?
Well, you're talking to me in the middle of a time period where I've decided to subtract anything that is not adding explicit value or getting me closer to my goal. So it's interesting that we're talking about LinkedIn, because I'm going to a once a month posting right now, and what I'm going to do in that post is have a very probably 5-minute recap of everything that I've done and what the business effects were, because that I believe is going to be a lot more influential than just kind of some of the stuff that I like to do for branding. Now, in terms of kind of how do you balance that, and obviously we got in touch because I use Clockify to audit my time. I realized there's a lot of gaps recently, and then I started looking at how much time there was for me, and it was substantial. And by substantial, I mean I'm up at 4, I go to the gym, I come home, I read, I now meditate, which is crazy because I am a Marine. Like I never thought about doing any of this stuff. I thought it was all nonsense, but I do that. Then I spend time with my daughter, bring her to school, come back, and then I kind of start my work day. So my work day starts right around 9 a.m., even though I was up at 4. I had 5 hours that included physical fitness, mental health, visualizations, time with family, and being a dad, just taking her to school. No one, I feel like no matter who, for the people that are getting up at 7 or 8, I'm like, I'm way ahead of you, because now I am primed to focus deeply on what I have planned for the day. And then I batch my time. I pay very close attention to any time I log anything as meetings. I'm like, am I having too many meetings? I log anything as, social media. Like I noticed that was a big one, like random social media scrolling. I'm like, wow, that added up to a lot of numbers this week. So I noticed I was probably over, not including weekends, probably 30 to 40 hours on social a month. So I said to myself, well, if I have aspirations of becoming, multimillionaire, I have very specific financial goals for my family and I, then is that person spending all this time on social media? Probably not, right? And then, I mean, I really started examining, like I said, I think I mentioned meetings, and then I realized my biggest issue, and we kind of talked about it. It's not an issue. I have very good referral network, but I want a pipeline. I want to know that I can reach out to people and my target market and reach them, not just rely on my network. So I noticed there was not a lot of time for lead generation. And I'm not the type of person who's just going to cold call people or anything like that. So what skill set did I need to learn? I needed to learn paid advertising, and I needed to kind of enhance my sales copywriting skills. So I started dedicating time to that. And then I have these kind of time blocks that are dedicated to that as well. But, I keep a log, not a log, but I have very specific 5 things I want to make sure I accomplish every day. And they change day to day. And I'm able to look at Clockify and I'm like, did I really put in the time for that? And I mean, I log everything, and people say to me, it's so funny. People saw that post and they say, yeah, but it takes time to log. And I'm like, if you are trying to learn anything new or just optimize your day, let's just say you want to learn how to have a better self-esteem. Taking time to read a book about self-esteem is also taking time. So like, I hate that argument. They're like, it takes time to log all that stuff. I'm like, that data is so important for someone who can look at numbers, because the numbers aren't going to lie. Okay. Like there's a very, very big difference from convincing myself that I put a really solid foot forward in terms of enhancing my copywriting skills. The feeling versus looking at, did I spend 2 hours today doing that? Did I spend 10 hours this week doing that? And knowing that, if you do that enough, that all of a sudden those things are going to become habitual instead of a goal. And that's all I was doing. So Clockify has absolutely helped me kind of look at what my habits are, the good and the bad, and to enhance. And it's just so funny because I'm having like my best month ever. Like ever. It is unbelievable. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention is I spent 45 minutes a day outside no matter what.
That's
I mean,
necessary.
It's huge. Yeah. No matter the weather, like I will be outside for 45 minutes, like walking or something. And I log that too. But
I was just about to ask.
yeah, I log it. But the me time is substantial. People will probably be like, what do you do? I'd be like, I work deeply and hard in that like 5 to 6 hours a day. And I know I'm accomplishing far more than many of my counterparts who think entrepreneurship is all about doing whatever you want, whenever you want. And I also know that I'm optimizing my health, my mental state, what I'm attracting in the world to me, like all these things, because I take the time to have those kind of routines. So yeah, it's been fantastic. So auditing my time has been largely fruitful.
So since using Clockify and in general shifting your focus to being more productive and using kind of a time blocking method, is it just for your me time, or have you seen like that me time has helped you with your business as well? Because now that you have this so much free time to do everything that you need to do to feel good, to feel better, how has that affected your work as well, or your general feeling in life towards anything?
Substantially. I mean, I think, and this is not, I want to be very clear about this. This is not kind of like self-care. Like I really deserve to just like sit down for an hour and just like watch something like that. That's not this. Self-care is, I know when I get up, I'm a morning person. So I know when I get up, my first inclination is going to be to check my emails, to check client activity, to check our checking, business checking and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, instead of that, I'm just going to work out. That stimulus really kind of distracts me, and it just puts me in like just a good mental place. I like to, just to lift or to do the cardio or whatever. And I do it early, like the sun's not even close to being out. So then I finish that. And then when I kind of do the reading, I do 10 pages a day, no matter what. And then after that, or before that, I'll do the kind of visualization or manifestation. This is a very direct answer to what you asked. I visualize the conversations I'm going to have with prospects. I visualize how I'm going to show up for clients. I visualize the things I'm going to say to not take things personally when someone doesn't get back to me, when we have a deliverable that we need to fulfill for them. Like, I think of all of those things. That time is dedicated, right? That time is dedicated. So as the day progresses, like, I could say to myself, like, I've already given that attention. I don't need to give it more attention. So I'm going to focus on exactly what I need to do now, what I outlined for myself. So it's kind of like a flow in which it's personal and it's business related at the same time. And it's kind of just harmonious the way they work together. And it just allows me, in my opinion, to be a better business person and to kind of level up. So I just think of all, I use that time to just unclog my brain a little bit and to process things very methodically. And again, like the social media part, although it is very entertaining and I do like to post and I love to be a creative and all that stuff, it just doesn't have a place right now until I could give people a very good chunk of information that could be very valuable to them.
Yeah, so what I take from what you've just told me, you kind of practice mindfulness a lot, right? So what you're doing in the moment, you focus 100% on that. So have you always been like that, or was it something that you learned over time? No?
No, this is very, very recent. I'm telling you, I read this book by this gentleman named Dr. Joe Dispenza. And the reason is I've interviewed some of the top entrepreneurs in the world. And one thing I could tell you that they have in common is that a lot of them believe in some of these kind of things that I used to think were crazy, like neuroplasticity, meaning like the ability to learn and ingest new information, manifestation, like the ability to kind of project something in your mind and actually have it come to fruition. The law of attraction, not giving anything negative attention and kind of looking at just things in a very positive way and projecting some of the things that you want out into the world. And it freaking works. Like, I'm just telling you, I used to think it was ridiculous.
Why did
But
you
once
think it was, though, ridiculous? Why was it ridiculous for you?
Because of my background, I think, my background, there was no time for those kinds of things. It was just like, go, 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 go. Like, we just get things done. And coming from the Marines, we had the lowest budget compared to any armed service. So we were always doing more with less. And we were very proud. That's a badge of honor for us. But there wasn't time for excuses. There wasn't time for, contemplating it. There was time for decision making and action. And now I've kind of given myself that gift of reflection. So no, I was never like that. Like, you were literally catching me at a moment where I am very centered and I also still feel normal. Like, I'm not trying to just talk to people on the street and be like, have you thought about manifestation? Like, I'm not trying to change
the right time.
Yeah,
Hopefully you won't have like go that far, but I mean, why not? Maybe one day.
Yeah, I mean, so and it's something I've noticed, and I still also feel normal, meaning, I just don't feel like I don't know how to explain it. Like, I'm not going to change my attire or change my language or change the way I podcast.
Maybe, sorry to interrupt, but I think maybe because you thought before that these things were like a load of rubbish, right? Like,
yeah,
just a load of just stuff that people that hug trees do, maybe.
100%.
And then now that you see it's not like that, perhaps you kind of are shocked that you still feel normal. Like, you don't want to go and hug a tree yourself. So maybe it's that.
No, you're exactly right. And you know what it's doing? The best part of this all is it's giving me the ability to kind of foresee that in the future, I'll be able to help a lot of other people who are in their early 40s be like, it's not over. Like, you can make a drastic improvement on your life without uprooting everything you thought to be true. Like, and I'll give you an example. Like, I don't even have cable. I mean, we have Disney and all that kind of stuff and Netflix and whatever, but I don't have cable because, you know what? Like, I'm not going to stay up to watch the game till 11:30 when I get up at 4. Like, that just doesn't make sense. So I'm very big on addition through subtraction, but this kind of practice and obviously using the app and like all those kinds of things really arm me to have an even bigger impact on people than I thought I could, because I could just maybe help flip a switch just one of the things we talked about. If someone took something away, then that's already impact, in my opinion. So yeah, it's a great feeling.
I agree. And yeah, I agree that you can change your life around like at any age, right? Maybe it's even easier when you're older because you kind of know yourself more and know exactly what you want.
Yes.
It's easier.
Yes. I think I think to your point, as you get older, you realize all the things you don't want to deal with. It's just a matter of you believing that that's just the way it is and you'll always deal with it, or actually doing something about it.
Interesting. I agree. I agree 100% with you. And yeah, it's cool to hear from you at this point in your life. When you're kind of still feeling normal, but you've changed a lot.
Yes.
So okay, so you've mentioned that amongst other things you've been using Clockify. So where did you even find out about Clockify? How did you start using Clockify?
Great question. I think I started using it for myself. I just wanted, I believe there was a business coach that I had heard, and he said, if you really want to audit your time, make an Excel sheet, from 8 to 5, and every 10-minute increment, you write something. And I was like, okay. And of course, I'm always like, there's got to be a better way. And then I discovered Clockify. So I was like, okay, wow. And that was really telling. And then I started thinking to myself, as I'm onboarding new people, as the team is growing, I really wanted to know how they were spending their time. And it was not to micromanage. I just wanted them to understand the same things I did, which is like, wait a second. Like, I could have spent a lot more time on that. Why did I spend so much time on, this graphic? Like I spent an hour and a half making this stupid graphic, like, or or I spent that much time scrolling in emails or visiting my email, even though there was nothing new for hours. So I started using it that way. And I also, unfortunately, I've had to use it for people, or for some of my vendors or contractors that, this weren't up to par, but it helps me evaluate, so, and then I was like, got it, and they would submit their Clockify kind of timesheet, so to speak, to me. And it was a great tool. And then they kind of graduate from it. They don't necessarily need it, but we all, as a practice, we kind of do a once a quarter, like, do it for a week and let's see what's going on, just for proficiency. But they're not required to do it every day or anything like that. I do that right now in this kind of season, just to keep tabs on it. But yeah, that's how I heard about it. And I was like, well, this is fantastic. I never would have thought of this. And and the reporting is what really helps the most, right? Like when you kind of are able to see the accumulation of everything, you are able to say, next month, if I cut this in half, that means I could add, exactly, 5 hours here. And that is just like really motivating, because you're like, I know next month is going to be so solid. So yeah.
Yeah, it makes kind of something that's not really, you can't really see time, right? You just kind of feel the results of what you've invested in your time. But with time trackers and Clockify, you can kind of see it in numbers, as you said. You can see the actual hours that you put in whatever in actual numbers, so you can kind of know what's next. So what would you say, which Clockify features do you find the most useful? I'd say reports, right? You just mentioned that. So yeah, reports, or? I
think reports is good, but I actually like, so, if anyone hasn't used it, the ability to have it on your phone, there's the timer function and then the manual function. I used to do the manual function, but I actually realized I was lying to myself a bunch of the time. Like, if you have the timer running, it doesn't lie, right? So I know if we're on a meeting that I've given my chief of staff, if I'm like, we're going to be at 15 minutes, period. Like, I could see it kind of creeping up, just like, a Zoom clock or anything like that. And then we could hold to it. But I think the timer function is a little bit more granular, and there's just sometimes I prefer that. So I could know, like, to the second, like, did I really need 47 minutes for lunch, or something crazy, which I don't do anything like that. But I'm just saying, I believe, like, knowing that the clock is ticking literally really helps me kind of stay on track. But I like that feature that you could kind of toggle back and forth. But yeah, I would say weekly reporting, or the reporting function as a whole, is probably the most important.
Well, that's good to know. I think a lot of our users really like the reports because, as what you've mentioned as well, you get to see it like at the end of whichever time period you use. Some people use it every day. Some people just sometimes in like specific times in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's the insights part of it that actually makes it worthwhile.
100%.
Okay, so in the beginning, you kind of mentioned your podcasts and how out of all of the things that you've started doing, like your photography, then your videography, everything in between, you got to podcasts, right? So I know that you have, like, you used to do an older podcast, right? I think it was called The Leadership Locker,
That's
right?
right. That's
And
right.
now you've kind of ditched that, am I right? And you've started NFT for newbies,
That's
right?
right. That's right. Yes. Um, I loved the leadership locker, but NFTs for newbies started scaling so fast, so crazily that we had to pay attention to it. So that podcast is just about 8 months old. We're gonna hit 1 million downloads this month,
Wow, 8 months old,
and
1 million. Cool.
yeah,
Congrats.
and it's a hot topic, and a lot of people. Oh God, let me just be honest. A lot of people say, "Oh, right time, right place." I'm like, no, dude. Like right experience. Like I'm not new to podcasting. You know, my co-host Heather and I, like we're seasoned podcasters. So the funny thing about this was we had no expertise at all about anything NFTs or Web3. So we call it NFTs for newbies. You're going to learn with us. We're literally documenting the journey. Now, to anyone who believes that you need to be an expert in anything to convey information, I'm telling you, we just proved you wrong because we were learning on the fly. And now we have a community of newbies and we uplift each other and we get a little bit deeper with our information. Sure, of course, but podcasting is just fun. And when you have co-hosts like I do, Heather, you know, who we met in person for the first time in August, and at that same conference, we decided wanted to collaborate, and a week later we had a podcast. But when you have that kind of energy, people who love that medium, where you could just completely be yourself, like I said, like no veneer and you know, nothing fabricated, just showing up exactly how you talk, how you want. It is just the best, and there's just a lot less kind of technical things involved. You know, we record, it's uploaded on in our little studio, and then it gets edited, and that's it. But you know, it's just like I said, it's less intense, but it is absolutely my favorite medium. And here's one thing I'll add for anyone who's ever been on the fence about podcasting. There's 2 million podcasts, over 2 million podcasts that kind of are out there and exist, but only 300,000 of them are active, meaning they've released an episode in the last 30 days. The competition there versus Instagram or somewhere like LinkedIn where there's 770 million is just, it's not going to be ferocious. Like I literally am talking to people in the hospitality industry who want to start a podcast, and we looked everywhere and there's just really not a lot of good information. They're going to make a splash.
They are, because those numbers are really low. It's perfect. It's
Yeah.
perfect time right now to do that.
Yeah. I mean, come on. Like, and then, you know, the podcast gives you written content. If you get the transcription, you turn it into a blog. And if you're videotaping it, then you have video content as well. You pull clips. So it's kind of like the triple threat. But just imagine if you're listening to a good podcast on the way to work, you know, you don't need your phone out for that. You don't need to be scrolling. You don't need to know that it's almost over. Like it's just, I like to think about it. Someone said to us, it's like you're in my passenger seat on the way to work every day. And I'm like,
Kind of like the
yeah,
radio. The radio is just slowly overtaking the radio. People used to listen to the radio in their car.
sure,
Now it's podcasts.
sure. So, you know, that's, I just absolutely love it. And being a practitioner of a service that you provide obviously helps a lot.
So that's what you love about podcasts the most, right? That part
Yes.
of it. Okay.
Just being yourself is my favorite. That's my favorite.
Hopefully more people kind of see the benefits of just being yourself. But I think it's difficult for a lot of people to do that online. Maybe podcasting could be a good first step for a lot of people because it's just their voice, maybe.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and they start to kind of gain skill, public speaking, so to speak. And I mean, you just start picking out the ums and the ahs and all these kinds of things. Like I have plenty of work to do in that regard. But at the same time, I also don't want to show up perfect. Here's one thing I'll say, like when you meet someone if you and I have this kind of conversation and we met in person and I was vastly different than I am right now, that would be a turnoff. So you want to show up in a way that people consume you exactly as you are. So that way, for those interactions that can be imaginary or potentially reality, that it's consistent. I think people are attracted to consistency, and anything, anytime you kind of deviate that, especially when it comes to kind of your personal brand or how you project information, I think it's a little bit of a letdown. So that's why I'm like really, really big on that. But yeah, it's a fantastic medium.
Yeah, consistency is really important for everything, especially showing up as yourself, because as you said, you don't want to show up as one person on a video and then a totally different person in real life.
Exactly.
So what about how do you evaluate the success of your podcast? Is it, I mean, obviously it's numbers as well, but is it just that? Like, what else do you consider?
No, community, like are like, are you getting inquiries?
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting people who are saying, hey, I listened to this and I had a follow-up question, or hey, thank you so much for the information, or I never thought I would be able to figure out NFTs, but you guys made it so easy. Also the negative feedback. Your episodes should be longer, or
I wouldn't say that's negative though.
yeah, right. I mean, like, okay, let me think of something negative. Heather has a lot of slang, right? So they're like, she should just talk normal. It's like, oh, okay, we had a review that said the blind leading the blind. I'm like, oh yeah, of course. We said that. We say that. We say that. We also bring on experts who can really kind of codify the things that we have not been able to figure out. So, that kind of feedback, that's successful to me. And just so the numbers are one thing, but are you able to build a community? Are you able to, uplift people? Are you able to increase their acumen in a certain area? Are you able to entertain them? And are you able to just, keep it concise and just give them exactly what they want? I think one mistake that I hear on a lot of podcasts that I evaluate are just kind of some of the inside jokes, so to speak. Like, let's just say you and I know each other and we had a podcast together. If we were just talking about like, oh, the other day was so crazy when we went here and like, no, that there's no room for that, in my opinion. There's no one wants to feel like a fly on the wall to people. They want to feel like they're actually in the room partaking. And the only way you could do that is if you focus on the listener and have a listener promise, which is for us to deliver digestible information in 15 minutes about, an evolving technology, period. So
you do that probably well. So there's a fact here. It says that according to one article in Entrepreneur, 1 in 4 people in the US don't know what an NFT is and how they work. So, I mean, obviously a podcast like yours is really good because of that statistic, but how would you explain to somebody watching this video right now, like what an NFT is? Just like, briefly, what is it? Explain it to us as if we're 5-year-olds.
Absolutely. So NFT stands for non-fungible token. And I think the biggest part of that you need to take away is token. It is a token of art, and it could be used a digital art. It could be a digital collectible, could be a digital anything, but it's a token for something usually. So why do these things have any value whatsoever? They have value because an NFT, the non-fungible part, means it can't be replicated. So you and I can have the same poster of someone or a show or something, and there's nothing unique about those. They've been reprinted over and over. Now, a lot of people who don't know anything about NFTs saying, you spent $4,000 on this ugly picture Gary Vaynerchuk drew, but I could screenshot it and I have it too. Yeah, but not really. This is where kind of blockchain technology comes in. There is actually a ledger, so to speak, a record on this thing called a blockchain, which is just a string of computers across the world that validates that you are in fact the owner of that non-fungible token. Period. So what does that even mean? Why is that even a benefit? It's kind of like a certificate of authenticity. It's kind of like knowing that you have the actual Mona Lisa or this actual Picasso or this actual baseball card. Like, it is a one of one. Now, there can be many versions of it, but again, why is that even important? What substance does that even have anything to do with? Well, ownership is part of what I would call the Web3 movement. So Web2 is social media content creation, talking to your audience, building an audience. Web1, and I'm telling you these things because I didn't know them. Web1 was kind of like the static internet where you just went and consumed information. So it has evolved. A lot of people are kind of unhappy in some of the financial sector. People want to own their own money. They don't want to have to go through banks. It's a kind of the elimination of the middleman. In social media, we don't want to rely on the algorithm. We just want to build our own community. I want to monetize off my community myself without having to have a platform get in between. I mean, just think about it. If you get your Facebook or Instagram shut down, who are you going to call? Like, you're not going to actually talk to a person. Like, it's like, climbing Mount Everest, trying to figure out how you get your thing restored or what community violation guideline you violated or anything like that. So Web3 is about not only, curating a community, but actually ownership, like true ownership of something. Okay. So I bought this VFriend, which is one of Gary Vee's collection. Now I have this piece of art, so to speak, and I paid a bunch of money for it. It is verified on a blockchain or in a record that it is mine and mine only. Now, for him, he says, if you own one of these, then you have access to my conference for the next 3 years. So that's kind of built in. And the way they build those things in is called a smart contract, which is code, essentially another way for code. So anyway, let me try and dumb it down a little bit more, and then I'll stop. But I bought this digital piece. I actually know it's mine. I know where I could verify it. It is verified on this blockchain, and it gives me access to certain things. Okay. And that gives me ownership of it. No one can screenshot it. No one could say it's mine. No one could say it's theirs. And it actually kind of creates a form of digital scarcity for projects that do really well. Now, I'll close with this. There's far, far, far more supply than there is demand. There's new projects coming out every day. Some of them are good, some of them are not. And we get into a whole different thing about, how you could evaluate what a good project may or may not be. But the entire concept is true ownership, having digital assets that can actually, accumulate value over time. And then 3 is just simply kind of the community kind of building. It's a movement, in my opinion, of people who really believe in this kind of technology and want to embrace it.
Well, thank you for clearing that up, because I've heard about NFTs, but I've never really understood how they actually work. But the way that you've described the concept about it without adding all of the additional details, which a lot of people usually do, kind of makes me understand why a podcast is successful, especially for people that are interested in NFTs. So, I mean, yeah, you're a newbie to it as well, right? 100%. So you're kind of learning a lot as well. Why do you find NFTs compelling, and kind of what made you want to, expose yourself in a way that you're new to it as well? And you could have gotten criticized, maybe you did as well. Like, who are you to say or talk about anything about NFTs? You just started yourself. So what motivated you to actually start with NFTs and, to put yourself out there as a newbie?
Yeah, Heather and I had invested in them, and we truly had no idea what we were doing. And here we are at this conference months after we bought our first NFT or NFTs and had spent thousands of dollars on it. So we were very blindly just kind of thinking this was something we should do because there was so much buzz about it. And what compelled us to kind of dive into it and to make content about it was that we wanted, literally, she and I just wanted to hold each other accountable to learning. So we wouldn't just kind of play with money because money is a very serious thing. But what we noticed was the amount of money being spent in the space was substantial. I mean, it is $1 trillion industry. Wow, and I mean, like, it is just altogether cryptocurrency and NFTs together. But we felt that we needed to be educated on this as the floodgates were starting to open. And as you mentioned, 1 out of 4 people know what an NFT is. That means there is a massive, massive part of the population that knows nothing about it. But we had a feeling that the curiosity wasn't going to dissipate. just like phones, just like cell phones, just like an iPhone, just like the internet, just like radio, just like TV in the beginning, like there's something new. And the way Tom Bilyeu puts it, and we were fortunate to interview him in person, was like, it's a one-way street. Like, we're not going to regress. It's only going to improve. Blockchain technology is only going to improve. Web3 is only going to improve. And while as many people think it could be this kind of fantasy land and fake art and fake money or whatever, it's actually very real. So once we kind of understood that and wanted to hold each other accountable, we just started seeing numbers, and we're just like, whoa, like there's a lot of people listening to this. This is out of control. And anytime there is something that gains a lot of popularity, but that has incredibly high financial implications, I believe you got to pay attention to it. And you know, it was just kind of something we had no choice but to explore. And luckily for us, we knew how to podcast, and a lot of people started listening.
So kind of similar with podcasts, right? So not a lot of podcasts currently, not a lot of people in NFTs for now. So you're kind of in the beginning of a lot of potentially really big things in the future. So that's cool.
Absolutely.
It's cool. Hopefully Clockify can help you track time so you can do as much of all of that as you need.
I do. I track it all.
So I'd like to just maybe, you know, finish today's interview. I think that I've asked you so many questions about everything that we wanted to ask you. It was such a pleasure to have met you today, to have talked to you about all of these really cool stuff. I'm actually going to be reading more about NFTs now. You've intrigued me to check it out.
Listen to our show. I'm telling you, you're gonna like it.
Of course, I want to. So I'll definitely listen to your show. And yeah, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It was lovely to talk to you.
No, thank you. And thank you. I believe he's producing. So thank you for being here as well. I appreciate it. And if there's anything you need, you can feel free to email me, since I'm not on LinkedIn that much anymore, but feel free to email me, and you were a great host. So thank you very much for all the good questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Lovely to meet you. Take care. Bye. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you join us on social media and follow us for more updates and more incoming interviews. Thank you so much.